We've spent enough time so far complaining about the UK. Let's take a look at Europe as a broader whole, because
let's complain about that.
Yeah, it's not looking good over there either. So first, as always, we've got some excellent work on the website. Josh is 132 episodes into Contemplations, which, if you have enough time for that, is worth going all the way through, because you'll learn a lot of good things. And this one's talking about, when does something become a vice? This is the most recent episode. And I think for Europe, at this point, migration is a vice. I think these people, they start shaking if they start to hear about migration figures possibly dropping on the graph.
I'm actually going to be covering how this is a vice in the final segment.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah.
William Hague has some interesting arguments.
No, it's literally
on behalf.
An addiction.
Yes. But you look around Europe and you see that there are some countries that might actually be doing something about it, or doing the right things about it from what you see. And it puts you full of hope, because we've covered recently, you speaking about how the far right, that being people who don't just want to import an entirely new population into their country, might be rising. There's a problem with that, though, which is that these people bait and switch. These people come in and they say, we'll do this, and almost like the Conservatives, just do the exact opposite.
In the West, I get that. I suppose you're hinting at Italy and places like that. But further east, when you look at Poland and Hungary...
Well, I was very disappointed this morning, because I have been looking into some of Poland, and there was this that I saw recently after all of the riots that have been going on in France.
You dropped perfectly, didn't I?
Yeah, you did, actually. Thank you very much for that. This is slick, just like better than GB News, just like we said. But this was Poland. This was their prime minister posting this video on social media last or the week before, when they were talking about France. They're saying, look at how beautiful our cities are. We've managed to maintain our population and culture. Here's everything that's going nice. Whereas here's France, and here's everything on fire in France.
It's very persuasive.
It is a very persuasive argument, I've got to say, because, people go by their gut, people go by their emotions and their feelings. They don't understand arguments where somebody tries to rationalize out a GDP graph to them. They see this, and it's a really great argument. And then you've got this as well, where a man was, this was also being put out by an MEP, Tarzinski, saying, look at Poland, we're so fantastic. We've not got any illegal migration in here, and or refugees, and we've got no terror attacks. Here's the guy saying, well, it seems like you're being a bit racist. You've not taken any in. And he's zero. That's fantastic. That's brilliant. And then you've got articles like this one, where the EU is supposedly heading for a clash with Poland over immigration. This all seems very, very promising, because if I read through a little bit of this, so Brussels has devised a plan, because they always have plans, 5-year plans of various sorts, for dividing up amongst its member states the would-be migrants at the EU's doors. But Poland and Hungary aren't happy. The EU used to qualify majority voting, which is intended to allow a sufficient number of its larger countries to override a small number of holdouts to push the idea through, because that's what democracy ends up being in many cases. With situations like this, you just get bullied.
This is literally the tyranny of the majority.
It actually is, and I don't often agree with John Stuart Mill, but on this one time, I will say, okay, yeah, you may have a point there. And it carries on. Essentially, each member state will be given a quota, and could then be charged €20,000 or £17,000 per head for falling short. This is supposed to be some kind of voluntary scheme where you can either pay the money, we're not calling it a fine, but you can pay the money, or you can take in the migrants. So they're essentially saying, how much is this worth to you? Which is just blackmail, as far as I'm concerned. And Poland and Hungary have been the only two holdout states whose objections were swept aside. And honestly, I got a little bit of hopes up looking at that and going, okay, Poland's actually holding out. Maybe there'll be a country that'll show us the way. Until Carl had to smash my hopes and dreams. I was there with my sandcastle on the beach, and he decided to kick sand in my eyes and smash the whole thing down. Because then
I hope that's not a glimmer of hope in your heart, Harry.
We don't let that in the Lotus Eaters. No. And there's been this going on, and I thought once again, okay, this sounds promising at first, but then you read a little bit more into it. So Donald Tusk is the leader of the opposition party from the majority in Poland at the moment. And he's been calling out the majority party and saying that you've been letting in too many migrants. And the figures that are quoted in here might be a bit true, because he says...
Donald Tusk, former president of the European Council, former component in the architecture of the ruination of Europe, has gone back to Poland and been like, you're letting in too many migrants.
Yes,
just
exactly that. So it says in this article, both the ruling Nationalist Law and Justice Party and the centrist opposition led by former European Council President, as you just mentioned, Donald Tusk, are raising fears about Muslim immigrants ahead of this fall's parliamentary election. In a series of social media videos earlier this month that have gone viral in Poland, Tusk warned that the PIS, which is the abbreviation of the Law and Justice Party, is trying to distract public attention and by denouncing the EU migration plan, which wouldn't actually see any people arriving in Poland. I mean, that's quite convenient for him to say, oh, the EU that I used to be heavily involved in wouldn't actually do anything wrong. But he does say that they would be opening the door to mass migration from Muslim countries. Excuse me.
But this is literally like the Conservatives and Labour Party throwing out the red meat when it comes to the election.
It is exactly that. I don't trust any of these major politicians. They're all in the same club.
Yeah.
They all believe the exact same things. They essentially just act as different faces. They're different heads of the same hydra.
Yeah.
They just swap in and out for the public's benefit every so often to make people feel like things are going to change, but everything just keeps going the same, just at varying speeds. So Tusk said that Kaczynski is preparing a document that will allow even more people to come from countries like Saudi Arabia, India, the Islamic Republic of Iran, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Nigeria, and the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. He went on to accuse the government of bringing in 130,000 people from those countries last year, 50 times more than when Tusk's party was in power in 2015. And once again, I don't think if this guy came in, it'd slow down at all, because that actually pretty much matches up with the sort of acceleration that we've been experiencing over here as well. After this fuss, following his first video, Tusk rode back a little bit. In the next one, he said, "We need politics in which everyone, regardless of their place of birth, religion, colour of skin, or their worldview, enjoys full respect and rights." You know, typical, just throw it out there. I'm not racist, by the way. There you go. But he still hammered away at the increase of migration from Muslim countries in Africa. And here's where the figures come in. So in a record 2021, the government issued just over 500,000 work visas to foreign nationals, 24% more than in 2020 and 8 times more than in 2015. Last year's number was only slightly lower at 470,000, but those figures include some work permits granted to EU citizens. But it will start that way. And then, as mentioned there, it just opens the floodgates to more and more people.
500,000.
Yeah, even if it is from other EU countries, that's an unsustainable number to be letting into.
I mean, at least when it happened to us, it was small numbers. It was like 100,000, 200,000, 300,000. You know, and then it got up to the million.
Small numbers like 100,000.
But they just start 500,000.
Yeah, that's it. It's absolutely ridiculous. So thank you for destroying the hopes and dreams.
Why do you think this is? Is this because of the monetary kind of reasons that
it might be, but it seems that this has been going on since before. These threats were put in by the EU, so I can only assume it's either pressure from the European.
To foreshadow the final article, it's demographics. They are complaining that European countries are losing population because.
Yes, that was one of the things they say. Poland is now a more economically successful country than we have been for the past 70 years, but we are losing our population because of the fact that we don't have birth rates. And instead of doing things like policies to try and encourage people to have more children, they instead go, well, I guess we'll just have to import an entirely foreign population to replace all of you so that we can keep our GDP graphs.
But then places like Hungary are doing that positive reinforcement. So is that working?
Yes.
I would imagine.
They had a 5% increase last year.
Yes. Hungary is actually the only place I can seem to find that seems to be pushing good policies in response to a lot of this. Germany as well, you can see here, Germany, they're complaining about migration, but the people complaining about migration want to assure you that we're still not going to ally ourselves with those evil far-right Nazis in the AfD. Those
Good for the AfD for carrying on, though.
I know.
They're winning elections.
So Germany's conservative opposition said Tuesday that large-scale migration is one of the country's biggest problems, which means that I'm just, like you say, throwing out the red meat for the voters. But the main and it's also the main reason for the recent surge in support for the far right, which is designated as the AfD. And that's a lot of the reason why a lot of these people do these things when they suddenly come out and say, okay, migration is a problem, because they know it generates electoral support for parties outside of the circle, outside of the spheres, outside of the party. So it's silly. And Germany is, doing what they do. And then I found this interesting article from the Spectator, I should say, talking about why Europe riots, which talks about, once again, the situation that goes on in Sweden, because it's referencing France, but it mainly talks here about Sweden, which says, once a quintessential example of an open-minded society that welcomed immigrants, has become one of the most violent countries in Europe. And they have about, police estimate there are now more than 50 gangs, mainly in heavily immigrant communities. Police have identified 31,000 people in Sweden, not Swedish, I imagine, who have some connection to the gangs. We have never faced such ruthless criminality, said Anders Thornberg, national police chief, in a recent interview. Sweden laws go easy on the under 21s, a model, he says, that is an open invitation to gangland violence.
Isn't that amazing? That it used to be the most open and willing to accept immigrants, and now it's a hotbed of violence that the Swedish police can't deal with.
And then reality kicked them in the teeth.
Yeah.
So sad.
It always happens. And you are right. It's heartbreaking. I don't like talking about this sort of stuff because it does get me down. But it's important to know the facts of what's going on out there. So one court case was particularly striking that they highlight in this article here. So a teenage asylum seeker found work as a hitman.
What? Jesus.
Found work.
How did you do that?
I don't know. I imagine these people have networks set up for when you get into the country. I need to do work. Okay, well, why don't you just go kill someone? Pay you some money for it.
I was trying to get beer when I was a teenager. Trying to get beer.
Well, I mean, he might be trying to get beer. It's just how he's, earning the money for it.
I guess.
Yeah, but then he killed the wrong person and went on the run. This being Sweden, his citizenship application was approved as he was on the run. I don't,
Hey, look, all I'm saying is there's a demographic shortage in hitmen in Sweden.
Perhaps
There probably aren't that many.
Are they helping GDP?
We're growing the economy.
Are they adding to the economy? Maybe. He was caught but sentenced to just 4 years in prison, and in this prison, he was given access to the internet. He was given a single room and security so lax that inmates can arrange external dental appointments. And when he was on one, he tried to run away.
What do you think of Swedish justice, Calvin?
Doesn't sound like they have any.
No, it doesn't, does it?
It really doesn't.
Ridiculous.
And as a result of this, other people who are going to schools, these asylum seeker teenagers, are now telling teachers that I can take 4 if the teachers start to annoy them. So literally just saying to their teachers, if you just keep annoying me, I'll kill you because I can take 4 years. That's the precedent that's been set now.
4 years, right? Wow, goodness me.
Yes, absolutely ridiculous. And then on to the last bit, which was one of the most shocking ones recently, which was Giorgia Meloni.
Ah, yes, the babe of the far right.
Everybody remembers neo-fascist Giorgia Meloni from last year. Even we put a lot of good words in for her because
she sounded good.
Yeah, she was saying a lot of the right things. She was saying good things. She was saying that she wanted to get the rainbow lobby out of the country, which I think she is still doing for now.
On social issues, she was sound, but she was still a globalist. She was
Yes.
still in bed with the big WEF people and the Ukraine scandal and all of that.
And that is showing through now, sadly, because this time last year, she was talking about how she wanted to call a naval blockade of Africa's Mediterranean coast. She alluded to the Great Replacement theory in one of her most controversial moments of her campaign. She showed a video of a Ukrainian woman being raped by an asylum seeker in an Italian city, saying that she could not remain silent in the face of this atrocious episode of sexual violence. So, wow, so based. Finally, we've got one of one of these women on our side who's going to come in and do what we want, except no. Italy to grant work permits to 425,000 non-EU workers. So where are they going to be coming from? They're probably going to be coming from, what was that list that Poland gave earlier, or Germans gave earlier, whichever one it was? Saudi Arabia, Qatar, all of these countries, Pakistan, Afghanistan. This is where they'll be coming from.
But what I love about this is they are just explicit in saying, well, this is about birth rates. Because in Britain, we have something like a 1.6 or 1.7 birth rate.
Yeah, I think it's gone down to 1.5.
1.5.
Yeah.
You need 2.1 for a sustainable population. Italy has 1.
Yeah.
So the Italian population is going to halve in the next 50 years.
Would you rather die out as Italian, or would you rather change and no longer be Italian? What do you want to be?
Would you rather someone else inherit your country?
I'd rather be Great Britain and die as Great Britain than just replace Great Britain with something else.
Or would you rather just do something useful to try and improve the birth rate right now?
We haven't had 2.4 kids since the 1960s. What changed in the 1960s?
Yeah.
Well, the sexual revolution, liberalism. Let's reverse some of these things. Let's reverse mass migration. Let's actually get pro-family policies.
Well, if we
in
did
place.
that, then the people who are in charge right now probably wouldn't end up being in charge because they are not the people to lead those movements.
It's also, really, what we would have to do is ban birth control. That's what it would have to be.
Yep.
You're going to take the Michael Knowles approach.
Well, no, but that's literally the reason.
Contraception, abortion, divorce, these are the issues.
They are actually causing the unwinding of our civilization. And I mean, I just don't see how women are going to accept that at this point. Like, they're not going to vote for it. And so
we take their votes.
Well, we've got to change our sex.
I don't think women are going to vote for that either.
We're teaching
Well,
sex
we
ed
won't
younger
let
and younger. We're teaching kids how to have sex and to do so safely, rather than say this is something that happens between two people that are married and this is how you get children. Like, we've got to change how we're teaching what sex is about.
The entire civilization would have to change.
Let's do it.
And
Not going to though. Find me a party that's going to stand on that, and let's see how they get elected.
Party, the Lotus Party.
you do need fundamentally a circulation of the elites who are in charge right now. And the fact of the matter is they have so many laws and so many obstacles set up in place that it's very difficult to even get in a position where you could try and do that.
Well, the only mechanism we have to do that as well is democracy. And if the average person's like, well, I'm not happy with the Conservatives, I'm going to vote Labour, then we're just trapped in this downward spiral.
Yeah, but you are right when you say it's about the demographics. They say the problem is that they have staff shortages in sectors including tourism and construction. The problem is, and I can't believe why is it always the satire channels on Twitter that seem to have a better grasp on these nations going?
We've got a Druck meme here.
Yeah, we've got a Druck meme here where Maloney is screaming that we have a dire shortage of Africans standing around train stations selling fake designer handbags on the street. And if we go down and look here, well, what's this? Oh, it's the youth unemployment rate between 15 to 24-year-olds at almost 31%.
Whoa.
Conscript.
31% almost. And Italy's like, guess we just got to import a massive amount of Muslims. This is what we need to do. We need people doing this. This will contribute to GDP, but this is fine. We can just leave this alone.
Paying their taxes.
So yes, I hate politics.
Yeah.
And Europe is...
But we can change it. This is the thing. Like, you guys have this platform. We can change it. We can make a difference.
I hope to.
Democracy is broken, but it can be fixed. Brexit taught us that. That was a bigger surprise to the elite. They didn't think we'd go that way.
That is true. But the problem is getting into the minds of the average British person that you're not allowed to vote Labour or Conservative.
Stop voting for the Uni Party.
And neither the Greens or the Lib Dems, all of that, you've got to find some real outsiders to actually vote for.
I'm glad that you two have got more faith in the system than I do.
It's not the system, it's the people that have faith in it. The system is messed up, but people can force their hand.
Hopefully.
They just have to know that they should.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Symposium series, this episode on existentialism and authenticity. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.